They saw her as nothing more than a mistake the moment she walked into that boardroom. The silence was heavy, but the looks were louder, cold, dismissive, and filled with quiet judgment. To them, she didn't belong in that room of power, wealth, and billion-dollar decisions. But what they didn't know was that their laughter was about to cost them everything. Within hours, the same woman they humiliated would make a decision so devastating it would leave an entire empire in shock. The question is, how did they underestimate the one person who held all the power? 4 years, she had lived in rooms where people pretended not to see her. Not because she wasn't qualified, but because they refused to believe she could be. Monica Hayes was used to carrying more than most people could imagine. As a single mother, her mornings began before sunrise, juggling conference calls while making breakfast, reviewing contracts while helping with homework. Every step of her life had been earned the hard way. No shortcuts, no handouts, just relentless discipline and quiet resilience. In the corporate world, she had built a reputation that spoke louder than any introduction ever could. Her decisions moved millions. Her strategies saved failing companies. People respected her results, even if they never fully respected her. But respect, she had learned, was fragile, especially in rooms where power didn't look like her. That morning, as she prepared for one of the biggest meetings of her career, she knew the stakes were enormous. A deal worth hundreds of millions was on the line. Years of preparation had led to this exact moment. Her reflection in the mirror was calm, composed, and unreadable. She had walked into rooms like this before. She knew how to win people over. What she didn't know was that this room had already decided who they believed she was. And in just a few hours, everything she had built, and everything they assumed about her, was about to collide. The moment Monica stepped into the boardroom, she felt it. Not hostility. Not yet. Something quieter. More dangerous. Doubt. The room was already filled. 6 men in tailored suits sat around the polished glass table, their conversations fading as she entered. Their eyes moved over her, not with curiosity, but with quiet calculation. Some glanced at each other. One leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his lips curling into a faint, dismissive smile. No one stood to greet her. Monica didn't react. She had seen this before. She placed her portfolio on the table, her movements calm, precise. She had spent months preparing for this meeting. Every number memorized. Every outcome predicted. She was ready, but the room wasn't ready for her. One of the executives finally spoke, his voice casual, almost amused. He asked if she was here to assist with the presentation. The words hung in the air, sharp and deliberate. Assist. Not lead. Not present. Assist. It was subtle, clean, designed to sound harmless, but everyone in the room understood what it meant. Monica felt the weight of their expectations pressing against her. They had already decided who she was. In their minds, someone like her didn't close 9-figure deals. Someone like her didn't sit at the head of a table. Someone like her didn't belong. She calmly took her seat anyway. As the meeting began, she noticed the interruptions. Small at first. Comments cutting in just before she could finish a sentence. Questions asked not to understand, but to challenge her authority. One executive avoided eye contact completely, directing his questions to her junior associate instead. They weren't listening. They were testing her. Minutes passed, and the disrespect became harder to ignore. A quiet chuckle when she referenced market projections. A skeptical glance when she explained the growth strategy. One man leaned toward another, whispering something that made them both smile. They didn't believe her. And worse, they didn't fear losing her. But Monica noticed something else. Something they didn't realize they were revealing. Confidence. Not in her. In themselves. They believed they controlled the outcome of this meeting. They believed she needed them. That no matter how they treated her, she would still push the deal forward. Because people like her were supposed to be grateful just to be in the room. That assumption would be their biggest mistake. As the presentation continued, Monica's expression never changed. Calm, focused, unshaken. But beneath that calm was something else. Something they couldn't see. A decision forming. One executive interrupted her again, this time more bluntly. He questioned whether she fully understood the scale of the transaction. His tone wasn't curious. It was condescending. The room grew quieter. They were no longer hiding it. They wanted her to feel small, For a brief moment, time seemed to slow. Monica looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes. None of them saw her as a threat. None of them realized what was about to happen next. Because while they believed they were evaluating her, they had no idea she had already begun evaluating them. It happened near the end of the meeting. One of the senior executives leaned forward, his fingers tapping slowly against the glass table. His expression wasn't just dismissive anymore. It was personal. He let out a quiet laugh. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough for everyone to hear. Then he said something that froze the air in the room. He suggested that deals of this magnitude required a certain level of experience and composure. His eyes lingered on Monica, scanning her like she was an exception. Like she was out of place. Like she was pretending to be something she wasn't. The implication was clear. It wasn't about her presentation. It wasn't about her strategy. It was about her. The room went silent. No one defended her. No one corrected him. Some avoided eye contact. Others watched, waiting to see how she would respond. They expected her to shrink, to explain herself, to prove she deserved to exist in a space she had already earned. Monica felt the weight of every sacrifice she had ever made pressing into that moment. Every late night, every door closed in her face, every time she had been underestimated, ignored, dismissed. And suddenly, something inside her became very clear. They didn't see her value, and they never would. Slowly, she closed her portfolio. The soft click echoed louder than anything that had been said. The executive frowned, confused. This wasn't the reaction they expected. Monica stood, calm, unshaken, completely in control. For the first time since she entered the room, the balance of power began to shift. Because what they didn't know, what none of them had bothered to understand, was that she wasn't there to ask for the deal. She was there to offer it. And in that moment, she realized something they would only understand when it was too late. They hadn't just disrespected a woman in a boardroom. They had just disrespected the person holding their future in her hands. The room didn't react right away. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. They watched Monica standing there, her posture calm, her expression unreadable. They still believed this was a pause. A moment of frustration. Nothing more. They were wrong. Hours later, the call came. Not from her assistant. Not from a negotiator. From Monica herself. Her voice was steady. Final. The $300 million deal was no longer on the table. No revisions. No reconsideration. It was over. Panic followed. Confusion. Urgency. The same people who had dismissed her were now desperate to reach her. Emails were sent. Calls were made. Apologies carefully worded. Respect suddenly offered, but only after the power had shifted beyond their reach. But Monica never responded. Because respect offered after disrespect is not respect. It is fear. That day, Monica didn't just walk away from a deal. She walked away from a system that had underestimated her long before she ever entered that room. And somewhere, in offices and boardrooms far beyond that building, her decision sent a message that echoed louder than any presentation ever could. This wasn't just about money. It was about dignity. It was about knowing your worth in a world that constantly questions it. Every day, people are judged before they speak, dismissed before they act, limited before they even begin. Not because of their ability, but because of how they look. Monica refused to accept that story. She chose to rewrite it, and it leaves us with a question that still lingers. How many opportunities, how many futures, have been lost simply because someone chose prejudice over respect?